Today's episode is brought to you by a month until we see games played again.
It's high noon.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to High Noon Podcast, the competitive Overwatch podcast. I am your host, Double Evans. With me, as always, is Deathblow. What's up, buddy?
I thought you were going to call me Sean McDermott. I'm doing great, man. How are you?
I mean,
I'm
you
dressed
know,
like
I'm not the
cosplaying.
person to make that reference. You're on Cloud9 right now. Nothing to do with the
I
actual
am.
esports org, but on actual Cloud9.
This is that great couple of weeks where everybody hates how much I bring up the Bills and their undefeated record. It helps when you play the Jets week one every year. But hey, you know what? We take those, Blevins.
We take 'em.
take those. Yeah, NFL season started, so I mean, it's Christmas morning. This is my time to be alive. If I could perfect human hibernation, I would have woken up 4 days ago. So this is the time I choose to be at my most awake and alert. So yeah, I'm really happy. And it is, however, also that awkward time when my two loves overlap for just a couple of weeks, and we've got Overwatch League playoffs and the NFL season kicking off. So I'm extremely tired, to say the least, but happy from watching so much competitive gaming and sports back, NFL back. Take that COVID, anything. I'm just pumped that football's here, Overwatch League is here. Everything's coming up Deathblow right now.
Yes, it is the perfect culmination for you right now, and it's starting to get just a little bit cooler in the area, which I know you're always a fan of. Nice cold weather. You are definitely a Stark in that way.
I don't use my heat in the wintertime. If anybody's forgotten that, I just don't turn it on.
Winter is coming.
You can see your breath in my apartment at times.
That's when I know to turn mine on.
That's the way I like it. That's when I'm like, oh, we're finally where I'm trying to be.
So we're getting there, but we do have, like we said in the intro, a month break before the grand finals. But we have made it here, Death, and we'll be talking about the matches that happened over the week, as well as previewing our semifinals for the actual we're finally here, the Cup, the Overwatch League Grand Finals. But before we get there, I want to make sure you guys are checking out Blackwatch Report. New episode went up yesterday. Make sure you're following them if you want to keep up with Overwatch League, with Overwatch Tier 2, Tier 3, and everything else that's not Overwatch League. Make sure you're following Blackwatch Report on their podcast feed, as well as YouTube and all of the other places that you can find podcasts. But yeah, I mean, we already kind of talked about what you did, Deathblow. It's football, and it's football.
A little bit, but to add to the housekeeping section, I just want to talk a little bit. Now, we've got 4 episodes, this one included. This is episode 1 of the break before Grand Finals weekend starts. And I just wanted to kind of outline our plan a little bit. We don't know the order of these episodes coming up, but we're just going to be recapping this weekend. We're going to take a little bit of a look at some of the strengths and weaknesses of the 4 remaining teams. We're not going to dive into specific matchups. We'll tell you who we know is going to play who. The kind of first set of games will be, because we know that. But otherwise, it's going to be kind of holistically looking at the teams and just kind of trying to narrow down a couple strengths and a couple weaknesses for each of them. I want to preface this. You're all about to be mad, okay? We looked at the best 4 teams in the league and forced ourselves to find weaknesses, okay? I know my experience in Twitter in the last couple of days has taught me that to think that one of these teams is a weakness is very hard for some people to swallow. But it's true. They have them, I promise. And we're going to talk about them. So just prefacing that a little bit, bear with us. We're also planning something we've talked about last year and we never
Yes.
quite did. We're doing it this time around, and we're saying it on the air, which forces us to actually do it. We're putting on the Owlies. That is our own personal Overwatch League Season 3 awards show. So far, the categories we'll be giving out awards for are MVP. We also have the actual official league MVP to announce a little bit later. We're going to give out our own. Maybe it's the same, maybe it's different. You're going to have to wait to find out. We're also going to give out a Rookie of the Year, a Comeback Performance of the Year, a Sleeping Dragon Award. That is a player that's really, really good on a really, really bad team. That was an award category suggested by Discord. And I ran with it. I just decided to put it in the show and go with it.
That's a good good category.
It's a really good one. I mention it because if you have any other ideas, now I'm not done listing the categories. Leave them in the Discord, though. It's a narrow window. We're pre-recording this episode.
Yes,
we're not going to do it live. So you got to get those submissions in early if you have any other category ideas. We're also doing Tank MVP, Support MVP, DPS MVP, and Coach of the Year as well. Some very standard awards there, but there are a couple of other ones. Yeah, I really like the Sleeping Dragon and Comeback Performance of the Year. I think those are a little more offbeat and should be a lot of fun to do. So yeah, looking forward to doing that. That's coming up. Make sure you guys put in any submissions. And the best part about this award show is we're not going to have anybody vote for anything. We're just going to analyze it critically and give it to the people that we think deserve it the most. That's such a weird concept. I know, blows people's minds just to think of it. But yeah, that's how we're going to handle this. So really looking forward to that, and look for that in the upcoming days. But we're also then going to actually do like a preview episode as well. Those are the 3 episodes we have planned. I did say there's a 4th, so we're not sure. We might take a break in the middle here somewhere.
Flex spot.
Yeah, we'll flex it, or if we can come up with something great to talk about, we will. But yeah, won't be either of our teams, Blevins, that will that will be part of that flex episode.
No.
More on that soon. But yeah, why don't you take us away here? We do have a little bit of news this week.
Yes, we do, and I don't have the news button set up, so it's high news. There we go. Yes, Lil Bow has left the Toronto Defiant. I'm trying to think. I mean,
is the interim head coach.
Okay, I'm like, who?
To me, it's kind of like a non-news story because he took over mid-season, and you usually let the interim guy go.
Right.
Despite his tweet longer that said he was surprised, but I think he might have been the only one that was surprised.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna. It's technically a thing that happened, but
yeah, they did kind of rally around the lack of Surefour and perform a little better than I thought. They had a little bit of a run in a tournament. I mean, it was a decent showing from Lil Bow considering what was given to him.
Right.
But this will be something we get into more in the off season. But the team is definitely looking to revamp, re-strategize, regroup, and retool. So you usually start by letting your head coach go.
Yeah. We did see actually Grayson on Twitter, who is one of the co-owners of the parent company for Defiant, who, full disclosure, I know personally, have met. He's awesome. Great guy. Shout outs to Adam if he's listening, which I know he does from time to time. He basically said on Twitter that their performance was unacceptable. And he was talking also about the Call of Duty team as well, but their performance, they want to be top tier team in the leagues that they're in. Again, talking about Call of Duty and also their League of Legends team, but stated goal of being a top tier team, and the fact that they're not is unacceptable. And basically said on Twitter, they're going to be making changes, big changes in the off season for the Defiant, which is, maybe perhaps to the surprise of no one, considering that Surefour at this point mysteriously just didn't play the second half of the season. And like, what else are you keeping, right? I mean, sure, you're not keeping Surefour if he's not playing, right? Get him out, rebuild. Let's see what you got.
Yeah, we're gonna find out, and I'm sure we'll, once the season is over, the grand finals are done, I'm sure we'll see a lot more cuts and across more than just the Toronto coaching staff. It'll be league wide starting soon. Yeah, and if last year was any indication, I think the amount of just player for player transfers and things like that. I mean, these teams seem to really want to change their identity, even when there's reasons to hold on to some of what they had.
Right.
A lot of teams tend to just kind of not really blow it up, but just make some changes. So it's exciting for us as content creators.
Yes.
So I'm definitely looking forward to it.
And this offseason in particular, I think is just a great time to just max out your team for max out your team for performance, right? Like don't marketability and all that, like, selling jerseys at the homestands, probably not something that you're thinking about right now. Maybe it is. I mean, I would not imagine that you're planning out in-person homestands, at least not to the capacity that you were coming into last season, right? Like, even if they do anything close to homestands, not going to be at the level that pre-COVID predictions were going to be, right? So, like, hey, your team's less marketable. Okay, well, you're not really doing a lot of that anyway. So just win, forehead, like, So I think we'll see a lot of teams level up in that capacity and not really care about some of the other stuff, which is exciting, I think, in the long run. Even if your favorite, we're gonna find new favorite players, I think, in this new age. So should be really cool. All right, next piece of news here. We've got Casores has joined the San Francisco Shock as an analyst. Did they pick up coaching staff or an analyst going into the grand finals last year? For some reason, that rings a bell.
I sure couldn't answer that question, to be honest with you, but they do, a lot of teams do like to kind of branch out a little bit at this time, especially even if it's not like signing players, but just like securing scrim partners from some people that they trust.
Sure.
An example was San Francisco. Like, I know they brought in a couple players to fill out their B team so that they could have internal scrims and keep everything in house and not have to show anything to anybody.
Right.
Specifically, I know they played with Sleepy at this time last year, so a little harder to do, I think, as they go into Korea instead of things staying in the US, etc. But yeah, I think it's an interesting time, I think, as a coach, but this is probably just an analyst, and it's a great opportunity for Casores, who we've seen before. If you don't remember, he was with the Atlanta Reign previously. He's been the head coach of Young and Beautiful in Tier 2, I think, at the moment. So a good call up for him. And listen, if you're an aspiring coach in the Overwatch League scene, getting any amount of ability to observe and watch Krusty in action is great. So yeah, I would be personally a little nervous about like adding another cook into the kitchen at such a crucial time, but if anybody's going to do it and do it well, it's the man, the myth, the legend, Krusty himself. So yeah, just I don't question Krusty. I'm out of that business. I broke trying to do that previously, and now I'm just not going to do it anymore.
Well, I think, as long as he's got the keys to the Cadillac, right? Like, you can listen to different ways and different, I'm going to stop the car analogy, but you can listen to like different references, right? And like, at the end of the day, he's making the decision or pushing the vision. Having, you could have too many cooks, but also you could be like, oh, well, I didn't think about that. You don't want to have too many cooks, but you also don't want to get in your echo chamber where everyone's like, oh, yes, Krusty, I bow down to thee. And then you never hear no, or you never hear an opposing. And like, there's some points in time where Krusty may either be wrong or just not have the complete picture. So having more people, I think, to a point is going to be good. And especially going into such a crucial time, right? You want to have, potentially some more perspectives there. So really, I think heads up signing there for San Francisco. And I mean, they're, They've been here before. They know what they know what they need. They know what they want, and this should be scary for the other teams for sure. All right, last piece of news here. As we alluded to before, we have our MVP for the Overwatch League 2020 season, and it's Fleta. Fleta's meta has been decreed officially, and Fleta getting it. Shanghai Dragons. What do you think, Death?
I mean, he's the only player with an entire tab in the stats lab dedicated to him, right? The flooded deadlift. We named a stats metric for Overwatch League after this man, and there's a good reason. I'm not going to get into again who our picks would or wouldn't be. We had our little stint when the list came out where we stumped for people, but we just told you we're doing our own award.
We're doing the
show.
Owlies.
So if you forgot, good. If not, then we're listen, there's nothing to criticize here, right? Like,
right.
Even if it's not your personal choice, this guy absolutely nobody balked at him being on the list. I haven't seen anybody with a major objection to him being the selection here, and I'm certainly not going to start now. You look at what Overwatch has become, and to me, one of the big differences between the beginning, right, when we were signing rosters for the original league, and now is kind of the death of versatility as an important trait. It used to be everything, right? Like we used to talk about, oh, you need somebody that can play this and can play this and just do absolutely needs to touch every hero within his role, and that's really not the way the league matured. And Fleta is a player that kind of defies that mold. He is that flexible. You know, we talk so much about how it's Prophet that can play everything, but it's Fleta's right there, and had the better performance and the better team this year. Whatever role it is, if it was a hit scan hero, he was on it. Ash didn't matter. If it was Tracer, he could do it. We had the Genji tournament. He was the Genji player. There was the Echo hero pools where she dominated. It was him. He picked up everything. He did whatever you could have possibly asked from a flex DPS player. And when you look at even the other top performing teams, you've got Carpe, who's got these situations where he comes out. Prophet's team really underperformed, so that he didn't really come out. But when the team underperforms, individual performances drop, stats drop, and that's such a driver for MVP that he wasn't even on the list, right? And Fleta was, of the DPS options, I think absolutely the most deserving. And if I have to really sit down and internalize and look at my choice and things like that, I mean, I watch more NA. I watch NA, maybe not more. I watch it more critically, and I'm fully awake when I watch the NA games. And that creates some internal bias, right? Because it's the region I feel more connected to, because I'm watching it live. I'm interacting with people in the live chat, tournament talk, and the Discord and things like that. And so, I'll spoil it so far as to say my MVP is going to come from the NA side of things, but I recognize that bias is there. Fleta just hands down does deserve this. You're not going to hear me complain. This isn't last year. The list, I loved the list. I would have been reasonably okay with anybody on it, and I'm certainly not going to try to contrive a reason to discredit what a great performance Fleta had. It's a little, just, I guess, if anything surprises me about this, it's that it took year 3 for this man to get this award. He was the preseason season 1 favorite, right? Like he was everybody's MVP bet going into the first year. So
that actually segues into the thing that this made me think of, is like just how much clown makeup do you need to be wearing as the Seoul Dynasty to like literally not be playing Fleta at any given point? Like, we've been saying this for so long. Literally, no Fleta, play Fleta, get better. We've been saying, like, I'm pretty sure we've named multiple episodes that, because I forgot that we named an episode that, and I did it twice.
First of all, you've named episodes.
True.
I try to make good puns and jokes. No, all joking aside, I mean, you're absolutely right. It's something I say a lot. It's something I'll be bringing up later when we talk about team weaknesses amongst these top 4 teams, to be perfectly honest with you. So I don't want to belabor the point too much here, because we do drive it home fairly often. But when you have an all-star, when you have a clutch player, when you have a superstar, you can't justify taking him off the stage. To me, it's just
right.
not something you can do.
It's just dumb. Like,
and it's just something Shanghai doesn't do.
This is so. I feel like this is vindication for us because we have been harping on this for years now. Of like, hey, hello, hey, Soul, you have one of the best players in the league. Why aren't you playing him? Hello, you're throwing for no reason. Hello. Oh, okay. Well, they finished another middling season. Great. Okay, they were good. Yeah, they were good when they played Fleta. I mean, they're sometimes good when they don't, but they lost. Never really made a run. Great. Okay, cool. Now it's like, and now Fleta, the season he's not on Soul, immediately gets MVP. Yeah, idiots is all I have to say. I'm not salty.
Who beat New York?
Soul. And guess what?
Did they play Fleta?
No, they didn't play Fleta, but I don't
No,
even get
I
me. Well, we're gonna get me started on New York, but
we will. We'll do it in a more timely station. I love both giving you heat and also taking credit I don't deserve. So I'm just in full agreement with everything going on right now.
Okay, let's get into the matches, including NYXL being the least clutch team of all time across any sport. With it's tournament talk. All right, so we started off the weekend with Florida Mayhem beating the Atlanta Reign 3-0. Washington Injustice winning 3-1 versus the Valiant. I can't believe we haven't called them that. I can't believe we haven't called them that until right now. I just thought of that. NYXL won their first losers match versus Guangzhou Charge 3-0. Shanghai Dragons eked out a win 3-2 versus Seoul. San Francisco secured their spot in the Final Four. I guess Shanghai did that as well. Against the Philadelphia Fusion 3-1. Washington Injustice wins 3-0 versus the Florida Mayhem.
Boo!
Yep.
Shame.
Seoul Dynasty, as alluded to before, wins 3-0 versus New York Excelsior. And then justice is finally served as Philadelphia Fusion beats Washington 3-0. Yes. Philly, the champions, we all so deserved.
I mean, we've already been doing it, so we might as well continue to fall all over ourselves to give us credit for things. Exactly how we called that bracket. We said we predicted Philly to win against San Francisco, but we both said I would like San Francisco to win because there's no way Washington gets by Philly. So if the worst case scenario comes along, there's the hard stop of Philly against Washington,
which is what
there
happened.
To shut it down. And it happened. And also, for the record, I've been active on Twitter. I've been very vocal about my feelings over the Washington Justice. I'm putting it behind me. It's over. I'll bring it up when the league does something else that I really, really dislike and reeks of
this is
integrity issues to me.
Yeah.
But it didn't ruin the top four. That's really what I asked for. It was never a fun, interesting storyline to me. It was just gross. But I'm not going to choose to continue to be mad about it. I'm going to put it behind me.
It's just a bullet point on the spinelessness of the league.
I did have to get those last couple boos out before the storyline ran its course, and it is officially over. So.
Yep. Now we'll use it as a reference when making a.
Yeah, we'll call it back up for a cheap shot down the road. I'm sure I won't be able to stop myself, but overall, I'm not going to harp on it.
Yeah, it is decided. Okay, so Death. Anything in these matches that really jumps out to you? I mean, okay, so taking away the injustice part of it, people really did like I saw a lot of people were really getting behind Washington and their play.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they took advantage of what was available to them, obviously with Decay moving in and taking over kind of the off tank spot, and then they put Janu on the hog, let him play the Zarya. it was effective. It was also a variation on the comp that other people were running with the Roadhog, right? We were seeing more Roadhog Diva than Roadhog Zarya. They were just about the only ones running Roadhog Zarya, except for like San Francisco mirroring to counter, right? Like it was that kind of a situation. So they were just doing something different, and I think that will always attract people to them. To me, it was like a band-aid over their problems. It doesn't
Right.
like going into next year. I'm going to treat the Justice like what their regular season standings were, right? Like especially since we'll adjust based off signings, and
Sure.
if Decay becomes locked up for that, that'll change things, et cetera, et cetera. But it was a storyline, right? And the broadcast was hyping it up because it was happening, and to ignore it is probably a mistake.
Yeah.
And to act like it wasn't a little crazy, a little nuts would have been disingenuous. So I think it was just kind of a lightning rod, and also the negative energy brings people in, right? Like you got me commenting on Twitter posts and
we
talking about
talked
how much I
a
hate
lot
it,
more,
et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, we talked a lot more about Washington than we ever would have because of
we talked more about Washington than we did Florida, than we did Atlanta, than we did a lot of teams that were still in the playoffs.
True.
So we weren't innocent of that either. So yeah, it was what it was. But yeah, it's a run that's over, and they're a team that had fatal flaws, and we talked going into the playoffs how I personally didn't think anybody was going to be able to break into the top 4, and they technically did that. So it was even confounding my own expectations a little bit, acknowledging that there was likely to be a team that came from the bottom and went on a bit of a run, but they went a little farther than we thought they could have. So props to them. I think everybody talks about Decay, and that's the I'm blanking on the right word, the controversial thing that occurred there. But to me, it was defined by what was Stitch. Where was that man in the regular season? Right. I think he could have had a little bit of a Decay effect, like what Decay did for the Dallas Fuel. If he would have just been able to perform like that in the regular season, it was something that never really happened. So, we kind of got 2 game-breaking massive additions to the team. One of them was just a glow-up, a sports magic, a playoff magic scenario with Stitch, and the other one was the situation that we're not going to talk about anymore. So, it was just kind of a perfect storm for Washington. It gave their fans a bit of a run. It gave the players some excitement, and honestly, might have done more harm than good. Because now you got to think they're like, we were so close, right? Like that mentality, instead of like, oh, we were the 18th seed or whatever they were, right? Like that's probably the way it should be looked at. So I'm very curious to see how they, as an organization, as a team, as a general manager, coach, etc., react to that situation. You have to think probably, listen, there's one player that was in all season that wasn't for the playoff run. That's Roar. He's going to catch a ton of the blame.
Sure.
Not saying he doesn't deserve it, but it was a top-down failure to me throughout the season. And so I'm very curious to see how they're going to react, what they're going to do with their roster going forward. And since they're out, that's kind of really all that's left to talk about, I suppose.
Right. Yeah. Wow. It was a good run, barring controversy, etc. It was really the only sort of Cinderella story that existed in this bracket, right? Like there was
flops like Houston and stuff like that, but there wasn't. They were the only team that really, like, people were like penciling in Boston for the Cinderella story, but again, it was just like Houston fell flat on their face. Boston didn't do anything.
Right.
That was really as close as I think we got. Otherwise, I'm trying to think I don't have the bracket up because we've just got the 4 teams left, but I don't think. Seoul's a Cinderella story on the other side of things. A smaller region, so it's less of a standout to say like, oh, the 5 seed really went on a run, but like, there's 7 teams in that bracket, so the 5 seed's pretty far down there.
True.
But yeah, otherwise they were the most glaring example of it, and definitely the most public.
Yeah, well, and speaking of Seoul, they lost the close one to Shanghai, and they come back in the losers bracket, face off against NY. And again, I talked about last week and in previous weeks as well that to me this is a franchise rivalry that NY has generally gotten the better of, but NY just not clutch. They just they didn't have it in them. They get spanked by Seoul 3-0, and puts an end to their season here. And obviously the distressed fan in me, and we talked about this last week. Like, is this acceptable? Where does this put them?
I believe I laid out this exact example.
You
and
sure
said,
did.
Is this enough for you?
And I'm pretty sure
I don't know that you actually answered it.
I didn't. I because I kept going back and forth, and I'd make another point, and
So now it's happened. How you feeling? Is this enough?
No. It's really tough, and I won't go. I won't go and do the back and forth. But this is. I'm planting the flag here. I want big booms. I want there to be big changes. I want there to be sweeping ones. And does this put them in a worse spot for specifically next season? Yes. I think that's what is likely going to need to happen if they want to actually win a championship, which in my mind, and I think a lot of New York fans' minds, is the goal. I don't really care what their regular season record is. I don't really care how many if they do stage playoffs or if they do these random tournaments. I literally don't care about those at all. I just want the trophy, and that's exactly it. If they're, they could have been the last seed in these playoffs, and since everyone made it, didn't care. Just win the playoffs. That's it. Get people who are clutch, get them experience, get the whatever. Figure it out. That's what I want. I don't care about, if SBB and the original crew aren't the best, fit for the job, they had their time. They've had many, many looks at playoff runs. They've had looks at championship caliber runs. They have had their shots, It's not like you're denying, you're not denying SBB and Libero and all of them an opportunity that they never were given, right? They had it, couldn't close, right? That's I'll leave it at that.
You're saying you want how many are on their roster? 9. You want 9 people cut?
It doesn't have to be 9. It doesn't. I don't want to be prescriptive in terms of just get rid of everyone and get me 9 new people.
Okay.
I just don't want there to be any sort of. I have no ties to any of the players if they're not the best fit for the role.
I gave this some thought, and it's gonna sound like a lot of players, but I think when you really break down percentage of play time, I'm gonna try to keep it at least 50% the same roster and see if we're okay. I'm keeping Animo and I'm keeping Jonak.
That is an easy keep for sure.
I'm letting my entire tank line go. Mono, goodbye.
Yeah, he wasn't the same without Meko. Yeah,
Hot Bombs never fully worked. It wasn't a thing. Yeah. And I was a little upset they went back to him. And then right in the end threw Bianca out there. To me, they looked better when they made the switch to Bianca. I wanted it to stay that way.
Right.
I think they go, well, this is our diva player. He's our Zarya player. And I just think he's the better off tank. Right. I just kind of thought they looked a little better on short notice, right? On short work, on short prep with Bianca. So what would it have been if they just committed to him for the postseason? That's really what I wanted to see. So Bianca's a bit of a toss-up to me. You can keep him if you want. I think you get your fundamental dynamic shift. But that's what I need from this team. I want to keep as much as I can.
Yeah.
And I want to completely reset what it feels like to play against New York, what it feels like to play on the team. I need it all to be different. So I'm cutting the coach. I'm cutting Mono. I'm cutting Hotba. And I'm probably cutting the entire DPS line. Libero, I'm sorry, you're not elite on anything anymore.
Right.
You're still solid. You're a Swiss Army knife.
That type of player is not the meta.
You're kind of dull. I don't need a catch-all if I just build a good DPS roster with everybody. SBB, sorry if you were the face of this team and now I need a facelift, so you've got to go.
Right.
Nene, I don't care. I just really don't. And Hacksaw, man, I don't know. Hacksaw to me is an interesting dilemma because I think he really underperformed by his own standards on this team. And I think it's a really shining example of when we talk about how great somebody is, right? Everybody gets it stuck in their head that this person is absolutely, absolutely elite.
Well, that was what happened with Flower, right?
So much about teamwork. It's so much about the group as a whole. How do you play off of people? Does Hacksaw have the talent to be an elite DPS player in Overwatch League? Anybody that says no is lying, because we've seen it. We've seen him do it on the right roster that fit him. But it becomes to me up to the coach and the organization. Does his style fit? How does he work with? So I'm penciling him in, but like I'm scrimming his spot. I'm scrimming possible replacements for him. I'm trialing people. I just might land on him again, I guess, is where I'm at there. So maybe you're looking at like Nene, Hacksaw, and you're looking at JJoNak, Animo, but I need a whole new tank line to come in, change this team up. We talked about how the coaching staff needed to push them to be more aggressive, and I didn't quite, you saw a little bit of it, but it didn't pan out, right? It didn't work. And I think that's because it's hard to mold Mono into a completely different person, and that's what they really need. And if we want just crazy aggression, like Bumper's sitting there, and we're both of the opinion that like I don't think Bumper just fits in everywhere. I don't think any team would just be better by signing him or adding him, but I think you can build that team, and Hacksaw's right there. Right? Like that's part of the team where Hacksaw won Rookie of the Year, looked so good that it feels like a natural kind of a thing to me, especially if you kind of want to keep him.
That would be an interesting pickup.
A piece for him, and you can really change what it is to be this team and also keep some of the things that have made you so competitive over the long term. So a coaching shift, a main tank shift, and all of a sudden I think New York's a completely different team, and they also didn't blow it up. They also still have some
you want to,
and it's important to remember that the fans need to be excited and need to like their team.
True.
That's
true.
You keep the Animo, the JJoNak, you keep some of those faces. You stop it from being a full London style blow it up rebuild, you know, which is it's a hard look. Is London better off for it? I don't know. Seoul's going to the grand finals, but you know, it's an argument you can make, and there's some reasons to think that's a way to go when you're not happy with an outcome. So I don't know. I would almost, they did good enough to me. I said last week, this was the mark. This was the minimum, right? You've got to get here. There's you can save some of it. You don't have to completely let it all go. And this is kind of how I line up on it. You need to half blow it up. You need to become very different. You really need to change, but you don't need the full reset.
Yeah. And basically I just, what I'm saying is the same thing as you. I just said it without all the like, without all the words and with like it. I'm fine with it being completely blown up. If that is what is deemed to be the best line, like go ahead and do it. I do agree with everything that you said in regards to like, yeah, I mean, you probably keep JJoNak and you probably keep Animo because they're like elite level at their role. You're not going to get raw. You're not going to get a raw pair that's better than them. And the only reason you would swap them out is if you brought in an entire team that already had chemistry, which is in and of itself still, I mean, we saw it work for Vancouver in season 2, but I don't know how many of those teams exist right now.
The team doesn't exist. Our Discord was talking about how light the talent pool is in comparison to, you know, with some of the call ups and some of the available options just today. So I put some faith in that. Our Discord, I mean, Kyle was in on that convo as well, and a lot of the guys that we know really study tier 2 quite a bit. Willing to take that at face value, since it's still Overwatch League season, which means that's not where my attention's been. But all right. Well, I think I just want to holistically congratulate all the other teams that we didn't cover in depth here as they exit the league.
Job well done.
because anybody still alive into this weekend had a solid run. A lot of
True.
teams were surprises
True.
to be there. Florida with the rework, the complete turnaround on the season was great. The Valiant exceeded expectations
Yep.
on the roster.
Mhm.
Guangzhou looked to be the number 2 team in the region, but I'm going to just lump you all into a big pile
Yeah,
and call
big-
you losers and
yeah.
move on to talk about the
A
winners
nice
from
big
the
thumbs
weekend.
up. That's all you're getting for the rest of at least this episode. So yes,
Yeah. Yes.
let's move on here, Death, and we are down to the final 4, and we have got 2 matches that are penciled in right now. The semifinals. So of course, this is a double elimination bracket now. So we got the number 1 from NA, so San Francisco, or I guess the winner side of NA, San Francisco, is going to be playing against the loser side from Asia Pacific, Seoul Dynasty, and then of course Shanghai is going to be playing against Philly. So those are our 2 matches right now, Death, that we have penciled in, and then of course the winners will play, the losers will play, and it's a double elim bracket from here on out. So that's what our our grand finals as an event, not our actual the grand finals match, but our grand finals as an event is going to look like. So, Death, you alluded to it before. We've got 4 teams. We're going to talk a little bit here about the strengths and weaknesses of each of those teams, and we'll start with the top of NA in San Francisco. Death, take it away.
Yeah, so to start things off, San Francisco, obviously the number 1 seed here coming out of the thing. There's a lot to like about this team. The reigning champions, everything. And that to me is their biggest strength, that reigning champions thing. This is not going to be a team that steps into this weekend and into these bright lights with all the pressure and blinks. I should say they're the least likely of the teams to do this.
Not going to have the first time jitters.
Yeah, experience in this moment is a very, very big factor. In sports, I've seen the worst team win the Super Bowl in the NFL because they've been there a couple times.
Yeah.
They've been deep in the playoffs. The other team was the Cinderella story, the 6th seed.
Yep.
May have been playing better, but they just it became too much. Somebody crumbled and it just didn't work out. And then the team that was perceived to be worse wins the trophy in the end. It's a really big factor, and it's one that especially winners finals or the actual grand finals match itself, I think it only magnifies its importance as you go further into the bracket, or if they make it down into the losers bracket side. They did that last year. They fell into the losers bracket, went on to win the entire thing. Now, most of these other teams, with Shanghai notwithstanding, experience that fall to a loser's bracket as well.
Right.
So take it for what it's worth. I also just think momentum here, right? Like they came out of this, the winners side of the bracket. They haven't dropped a match in this playoffs yet, and I think that is a very, very big factor. That is a shared strength with Shanghai, so I'm not going to mention it there as well, but I think that is a big factor, right? They feel like internally they've got it under control, they've got it figured out, it's going according to plan, and I think that's a big deal for confidence, and that is another big thing that this team operates on, right? The personality of this team is that of really Super and still Sinatra, of the cockiness that borders on arrogance, and it's not a problem until you're losing and being a distraction. And that's just not something that's happened for them yet. So it's just all positive for San Francisco right now. The last big strength I want to mention here for San Francisco is something we mention a lot, and that's we have today. It's Krusty, the best coach in Overwatch League. Listen, we've seen him jump teams mid-season from a 10-0 stage for Boston into revamping and fixing one of the worst teams in the league, the San Francisco Shock, to turn them into 2-time grand final appearances, right? Like I'm going to call this whole weekend the grand finals for an appearance, at least for now, because it fits a narrative, which is good enough for me in this moment, even though I do certainly hate narratives. But yeah, listen, they're just, he's not yet. He just don't miss, right? Like, to borrow the meme,
Yeah.
he just doesn't miss. It's never happened where he's failed to prepare his team for a match, or he's failed to prepare his team for a meta or a situation or an event. Sure, they've lost here and there on occasion, but like that happens to literally everybody. It's near impossible to go fully undefeated over the amount of games they play.
Right.
You know, and we've only seen the win list, not the loss list so far, and there's good reason for that. It's near impossible to do. So yeah, they seem to have an edge there. You know, there's plenty of arguments to be made for the quality of the other coaching staffs here, but San Francisco, until they fall off, until they don't win a championship, until they don't win a tournament, you know, they have the coaching advantage here going forward. No, I prepared you guys. I told you we're going to give weaknesses. This is the
try to,
bracket,
at least.
the winners bracket champion. They're really good. I promise. I still think that, but I think they have an issue with the quality of their Sombra play. This is one hero that I just don't feel supremely confident in who they're going to put on it. I don't even know that they've been super consistent with it. My memory is that it's kind of been on Rascal lately, and I just don't know that he. Listen, it's not that he's a problem on it. Like I said, they're a great team, and they've been great in Sombra metas. But when you start to compare them to what we've seen from Hisu and what we've seen from Lip and some of these other guys that are on this hero in this tournament, I just think I'm left a little, maybe not even underwhelmed. I'm just whelmed by the quality of the Sombra play. No, I'd rather be underwhelmed, to be honest. At least I know what I'm feeling. So yeah, I think Sombra is a very, very important hero, and I'm not sure it's where they're at their absolute best. Also, the other weakness I want to mention is they haven't committed to the composition that they thought was best coming into the playoffs, right? Like, they've had to change things up a little bit. They've had to work through the 0-2 start against the Washington Justice and then find a way to figure it out. And that tells me that maybe they're just a little, I mean, not in over their head, but they're just a little off base on their read on what this metagame was. And they really need to sit down and get things right here. And they brought in an analyst, and maybe that's a sign that they also think, hey, maybe we're not fully in on this meta. We're not fully confident on our plan here. So let's bring in that outside voice, that get out of the echo chamber, like you talked about. And maybe that really does help with that. But I mean, thankfully for them, they're uniquely suited to adapt on the fly because of how good their coaching is, etc. But that doesn't stop. Like, you'd rather your team just get the meta right, play it perfectly, and never change, like we've seen from Shanghai and like we've seen from, to a lesser extent, Philly. Obviously, they did drop the match to San Francisco, but they've really been just kind of locked in on what their plan is and what they're doing. So those are the strengths and weaknesses as I see them for San Francisco going into the tournament. Obviously, still considered by many to be the favorites to win, though.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts there? Anything you want to add to San Fran?
Well, the only thing I want to add is one of their biggest strengths is that they're not cowards. They're playing Rascal. I mean, no other team can say that. But well, no, I mean,
I'll write bravery.
Yeah, bravery. There you go. I think it can't really be understated how much not just stage experience, because all these players, most of these players, I'm not going to try to think if there's players that are just this season or whatever. But most of these players have obviously played on a stage before, but like, I mean, the stage in general, like the big show, right? Like, it is a different experience. You can play scrims all day. You can play your weekly matches all day. It's not the same when you get to this level. Like, I have literally had experience doing that, playing at the, not the highest level of play, but like in the stadium where it matters and there's a crowd. And obviously this won't be the case, but like, it is different playing when there are higher stakes. Even if you're physically playing in the same spot, it is different. There's a different amount of pressure. There's going to be a different procedure. Not everything's going to be the same that everyone's used to. And having already been in that situation and having taken it home and in such dominating fashion last season, I don't think it can be understated how much that experience is going to help. And it's not just from a team perspective, but like you not only have your entire team that's like that, but like these other players, like it's not going to affect everyone in the same way, right? And if you're on a team where everyone is inexperienced, like you don't even have like the veteran to fall back on. It's like, no. Don't worry. It's going to be like this. You're going to feel like this. If you feel like we've got your back, etc. And like you can try to prep for that all you want, but unless you've been there and until you have been there, it's going to be tough to deal with. So
And the answer to who in the specific player is Ons, and he's been a very important player for this team. He's, I mentioned Rascal on the Sombra. Ons is playing it as well. I didn't mention it at the time, and I should have. And he's been doing all right, and he's been solid. But there's times Rascal does it as well. So I don't know why I'm still talking about the Sombra thing. I already covered that. But that is the player, and I don't know how COVID's going to affect what the responsibilities are going into a grand finals weekend, right. But typically there's media responsibilities, there's interviews, and even if that's not as many, okay, we're spending an hour and 45 minutes of what is usually a workday filled with scrims and team meetings doing photo ops and photo shoots, et cetera. There's going to be, virtual interviews and there's going to be fanfare to this. There has to be. The production value has to tick up for this thing.
Right.
Like
otherwise, why did they do it on location, right?
Otherwise, what's going on? So yeah, that's definitely going to be a change, and that all ties back into that experience, that strength of this team. But they're not immune. There are people within that team, as you mentioned, that haven't been through it, and hopefully the team can carry them through it and help them feel comfortable. But it will be weird. Luckily for them in this instance, Ons is he's South Korean. He's going to be just fine going back home to Korea to participate and everything like that. It might feel more normal to him in a lot of ways than the regular season did, for example. But there is that pressure, all that stuff. So they're not immune to that. Great call.
Yep, absolutely. Okay. Let's move on and let's talk about the other winner's side team here from the Asia Pacific region. That, of course, is Shanghai. Death, what are you seeing as the strengths for Shanghai coming in to this event?
I can't help but fire a shot at all three of the other teams. And it's not really a shot at the three other teams, but that's how their fans are going to view it. Shanghai has the best, most complete roster from top to bottom. Sorry, San Francisco. It's not about the talent level of the players, and so much of it is about hero pool to me.
Sure.
There's nothing Shanghai doesn't cover. How in love were we with Ding and Diem Blevins? How in love were we with those guys? Where are they? You don't even see them because it's Fleta and it's Lip now.
Yeah.
And that it works. And to me, you've got the meta works for what they want to run as well with their players. Lip is a really, really great Sombra. And you've got Fleta, the literal MVP, the most valuable player there. You've got Fearless, especially in this dive tank meta game that they've been running. His Winston is arguably the best in the league so far. And there's a lot of people want to talk about Smurf as well. That's fair. I'd love to have that conversation. Maybe we do in the off season, but just across the board, Void on the off tank position, Lee Jae-gon on the main support. Izzyaki's probably the biggest weakness on this roster, and he's a phenomenal Zen player, a really solid Ana. I've had no complaints with his Moira gameplay whatsoever. And he's been a standout performer every time he's been given the chance on the stage, and that's their weakest roster member. So I think they just have every base covered. Even if somehow the meta swings wildly in an unforeseen direction and it's just double sniper all over the place, fine, let's go Fleta and Diem or Fleta. It just doesn't matter. I'm confident they've got what they need. And that's something I really can't say about every single team on this roster, that there's like just no drop off no matter what they need to do. Shanghai just has it. I also think one of their big strengths is They locked into the dive meta, the dive style in this meta game. I believe that is the correct play style. They have not dropped a match while playing it. They seem to just have it mastered, figured out, and nobody's really been able to super test them outside of maybe Seoul with the 3-2 there in the winners bracket finals. That was the only gap in the armor that you saw really at all throughout this entire playoffs. You know, New York played against them well, but they were just they were tight. You just couldn't, despite playing well, they were like drawing maps, trying to extend the series instead of winning maps and trying to get the upset, and it just never really quite happened. So I think they're already locked in. They're just keep it up, keep practicing it, keep refining what you're doing. They're already there. I don't think this team needs to, even though they could easily, as I said, make changes. I don't think they have to. I think they've got it figured out. Their coaching staff's done a great job through this playoffs. They're in, they're locked in, they're honed, they're ready to go. And they should be terrifying. The biggest weaknesses I see, a lot of Izayaki on Moira, and to me, like Anna feels like the better pick, especially in those matchups like against Seoul, where they're running the Roadhog a little bit, and you know Anna's just so good at shutting down a lot of what Roadhog does. The sleep cancels the ultimate, the grenade cancels the healing effect, and it really puts a big wrench in the works here for a lot of these Roadhog compositions, and we're going to see less of that going into this bracket, but Seoul's there, it's not going away. San Francisco, I think, is going to want to run a mix of both. So is Izayaki on the correct hero? I don't know. Like I said, I have no issues with his Moira gameplay.
Right.
He's been doing it well. I just personally have always kind of thought the Anna fit in a little better, and listen, the Shanghai coaching staff knows better. They haven't lost a match yet. But to me, I would look at that as maybe there's a little utility missing from Shanghai. Our team's going to be able to find a way to force them off of the hero they want to be running, go onto the Anna, etc. Of the three, of Zen, Moira, Anna, I don't know that I've seen enough of Izayaki's Anna to be super confident in it. So that could be part of the reason why here. Who knows? But the other ones is, listen, this team is, we talked about the experience of San Francisco. Shanghai is the inverse of that. This team was 0-40 2 seasons ago, and now they're here. They're in the grand finals. Their new additions don't have the experience of coming from championship pedigrees like Seoul does. They're just, this is foreign to all of them. Okay, they've never been in this situation. That's a very, very big ask. They've got the talent. They've got everything they need to take down this tournament. But until they do it, you can't say that you know they can. Right? It just might be a bridge too far for them this year. And the other thing might tie into that a little bit. That inexperience gets in, the jitters. The last weakness I want to bring up is something I've mentioned a lot, and that is the Shang 9. There's a history here. It's the tournaments really brought it out and highlighted it. They just kind of blow it sometimes in the big moment. When somebody could just stand on the point and they win and the map's over, they just walk off of it, right? It started last year. Young Jin did it in the postseason, I think, and it carried over into this year. I don't know what it is. They seem to have a propensity to shoot themselves in the foot in the big moment. There's times they've overcome it and won anyways, but in the grand finals, do you think if they give San Francisco that opening, that San Francisco's just going to roll over and not run right through there? You can't do that in this instance. So those two really tie together. That's why there's 3 for this team, because it all
all
works,
meshes
right?
together.
Like it could really, really happen. And anybody, like I'm not gonna call him out, but I got somebody in my DMs that's just like, Shanghai's winning this whole thing, and I'm like, that's what everybody told me about New York in season 1, and that's what everybody told me. You know, it's just, it doesn't. It doesn't work that way. The best team doesn't always win in the clutch moment. It's just, that's why it's clutch. That's why it's so fun and so exciting. That's what these playoffs are about, is how hard it is to really just win a championship. And until you've done it, that's when you get the benefit of the doubt that you can't do it, that we all know you have what it takes to close it out and to win the season. Shanghai, as good as they've been, never been there, never done it,
Right.
never even sniffed at it. And this is a whole new world they're stepping into. Plenty of talent to do it. Let's see if they've got the fortitude.
Yeah. I think, we don't need to belabor it too much, but like that's why you're playing it out, right? Like it's not just like, oh well, we just concluded the season. Let's tally up the total number of wins and the total number of map wins, and okay, San Francisco is our champion. That would be boring. No one would care about that, and the league would have died after the first season, I think.
Yeah, go watch soccer. They do that already.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they at least have. I don't know enough about soccer to defend that, nor do I care enough about soccer to defend that. But like, we're playing it out because of those moments, because of that. In that vein, the one thing that I think I would put as a strength, but maybe it's a weakness, and likely it's just neither, it's just a thing, is the like, it's the story, right? Even though this team is not the same team from season 1, it's the same franchise. People are going to be talking about it forever if they win. 0-40, literally the worst sports team in history to championship, right? Like, that is going to either fuel them or haunt them. I don't know which it is, but it is going to be there. And if you think that it's not going to be in the players' heads, I highly doubt that. It is something. It's probably going to be brought up 1,000 times once they're during their matches. But it is a thing that is there. Whether it's a strength or a weakness is yet to be seen.
I'm going to reject it because that's a trip down narrative street, and I only do that when it suits me.
Right.
And even then, I try not to because I really hate narratives.
Yeah. But that's what we'll be hearing a ton of. And I just hope that there's that people have brought their NYXL jerseys so that they can cry when Shanghai wins the championship. Moving on, the losers bracket teams. We've got Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Fusion, who brought justice to the league by taking out the Justice. Death, what do you have as their strengths?
Yeah, I think their big strengths here are two big factors, and they're very player specific factors. They really, their weaknesses, or at least one of them are as well. The best support line in the league, right? Like Alarm and Funny Astro together have been incredibly valuable to the Philadelphia Fusion. I don't often agree with a lot of the decisions the coaching staff makes, and it just hasn't mattered for almost the entirety of this season. It just hasn't mattered. Some of the things they've done. They can play Carpe, they can not play Carpe, they can keep Sato on the roster when I don't think he's Overwatch League caliber at the beginning of the season, and then they could just prove me wrong, and it doesn't matter because these guys just cover so many mistakes. They just fix all aches. Like anything that can go wrong can just be beaten by how good these guys are, not even individually, and they are, but as a duo. Like they just work off of each other. We've seen Philly try the 2 flex support thing and then go away from it and like bring Astro in, and like they're winning with Lucio. Lucio's not meta, nobody else is playing him, but they just work together as a team, whether it's calling. We don't know how their calling structure works, et cetera, but as a unit, this team looks elite as long as those two are on the stage. And it's such a boost from that position, right? How important is it when the Ana gets picked or the Moira gets picked? That's it. It's the fight. It's over. It's not going to happen. In the case of Philadelphia, if Alarm even gets close to dead, like Astro comes in with a Superman cape on, flying in on Lucio, boops people back, amps up speed, and they're out of there. It always seems to work. They never seem to be a weakness. I don't even know if I've seen a bad day from that duo, to be perfectly honest with you. The other one is the Carpe clutch. Okay, like we've seen it, right? It doesn't matter what you think should happen. It doesn't matter what you think's gonna happen going in. If you can just throw Carpe on Widowmaker and he can just click every head.
It's always winnable.
Hashtag winnable. It doesn't matter. Like it's just he can put the team on his back and 1v6 the opposite squad. It doesn't matter how good they are. Nothing matters if Carpe decides I'm winning this team fight and he's in the right position to do it. It can happen. So that is absolutely a massive strength. It put the man on the MVP list.
Yep.
Everything about it. On the flip side of that, this weekend, I didn't see Carpe out there 100% of the time, Blevins. I'm pretty sure I saw that last weekend. I keep questioning the coaching staff. Are the support line going to bail him out again, et cetera, et cetera? I don't care. This is it. This is when clutch matters the most. You cannot bench Carpe. He can play Reaper, I promise you. Literally every Overwatch League DPS player ever in the league, just put him on Reaper. They'll be fine. There's no reason to bench Carpe because he has the ability to switch, to go off script and do it. So he's their strength, he's their weakness. How do they use Carpe?
Mm-hmm.
He's on both sides of this list. I couldn't make the list without mentioning him on both sides because it drives me nuts a little bit. The best support line in the world is great. It really erases every weakness in the regular season when you're not going to win absolutely every single game anyways, right? They were top of the standings coming out on the NA side, at least. I don't really know what they look like combined, although I think it's just up. Okay, they were number 2. Yeah, Shanghai had the better overall record from their bracket. But leave him in, forehead. That's it.
Yeah.
That's my thing. So yeah, it is 100% about the coaching staff for me here. That it's not really a weakness unless they get it wrong, but I've seen them get it wrong and I saw him get it wrong this weekend. So don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
The second weakness, this got heat. Our boy Frito, poor guy, put something on Twitter that was true and nobody liked it. Okay. Sato's still a weakness for this team, guys. He's not. And listen, does it matter? No, it didn't. They were the best team in NA across the thing. It didn't. He wasn't a debilitating weakness. He wasn't like I thought he would be, fully copying to the fact that I completely got this man wrong. I didn't think there was any roster you could put around him that would make him work, that would make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
The mistakes are still there from the failed shatter montage in what my YouTube video at the beginning of the season to just as it boils down to it, these are the best 4 teams in the league. And I think 2 of them have better main tanks. And that to me says that that's a weakness for the Philadelphia Fusion.
Mm-hmm.
Can they still win it? Absolutely. They've proven that, right? It doesn't have to be a weakness doesn't mean this is why you're going to lose. And I think that's where people got mad at Frito on the internet. He's not saying like this team can't win with him. He's just saying I think they'd be better.
They're worse off with him
if they were the ones that had Fearless when they were playing Winston, right? Like, and I if you can dispute that, then I don't think if you want to dispute that, then I really just don't think you've been paying attention or you've been seeing what you've wanted to see.
Right.
And that is so much the case in sports. Listen, it literally drives me nuts. Google Josh Allen. Just Google it, right? You'll see the widest gap in opinions in the world, right? He's the least accurate quarterback ever. He can never be good in the National Football League. He had a 70% completion percentage yesterday, something like that, but he threw one bad pass. Guess what's on Twitter? The one bad pass. It's the one bad pass where he missed the open receiver, okay? Like, and that's why narratives bother me. And that's why I think Sato is such a narrative-driven player that I think all analysis on him has died. It stopped happening. I'm a little guilty of it as well. I just said, well, you know what? They're winning with him. They're winning consistently. They're winning all the time. I haven't watched much Sato tape recently. I've just kind of been like, yeah, that's true. But if I really sit and watch, I mean, it's not like hydration looked on Winston. Right. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the Final Four here. And we're talking about a player that just at times makes mistakes. And that's something I don't see from Fearless. That's something I don't see from Smurf. And I don't get to watch Gesture play Winston anymore. That's not a thing. So who knows? But at least for the time being, it's something I'm marking in the weakness column for the Fusion. Sorry in advance. Feel free to @ me. I'll block you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I just gotta. I'm doubling down on the Carpe discussion. Like in those times, you give the clutch player the ball. You know, that's who you go to. There's a reason that, like, at the end of games, when in basketball, when there's one shot to be had, that's the game winner. Like, Jordan got the ball, Kobe got the ball, LeBron gets the ball, like, and the teams have to like quadruple team him or whatever, right? But like, you don't take them out at the end of the game. You don't take out the ace player at the end of the game because it's like, well, you know, our scrims did this. It's like, no, that like, scrim bucks are not accepted here, right? Like, they're there to build your team, to build your foundation, to build your, like, you. This is something that really, it's very hard to internalize as a coach, especially when you become a coach, and when you were very recently a player, which is something that I experienced, is like, you can only do so much. You can only watch so much tape. You can only have your players practice so much. You can only tell them, you can tell them everything in the book. When the game starts, it's in their hands, right? Like, and yes, the coach is doing, like, it's not like the coach is going to sleep, right? They're still, you know, doing whatever. But like, once they're in the match and they're playing the map, like, they have to do their thing. And like, it is not a script. It is not a, oh, well, we played this. Like, you go off of a script, but like, it is improv at all points. And it is, it needs to be, you need to have room for the players to outperform, because everyone is going to be playing their absolute hardest, right? There is no more talk of like, there's no more excuse of like, well, you know, they don't really care about stage playoffs, or the players don't want, like, literally every player and team is going to leave it all on the stage, right? They're going to be playing down to the wire for everything. So you want a player that is able to, like, to perform and adapt to a team that is going to be playing better than they have all season, theoretically, right? That are going to be trying to be doing crazier things or better you know, like, they're going to be performing at a higher or an enhanced level than they were during the regular season because of all the things that we mentioned. So how can you possibly take out your ace player in Carpe, even if, you know, that, like, it's, you just can't do it. You can't do it. I agree with you, Death. So
It's overthinking, it's overcoaching, and it's a problem.
Yep.
Don't do it.
Don't do it if you want to win. Okay, last team here for this episode, Death. Seoul Dynasty. What do you got on them?
Biggest strengths, much like Philly, there's a clutch factor on one of those DPS players. His name's Prophet.
Yep.
What did he do the last time he saw a grand finals appearance? He set the stage on fire.
Yep.
He stood out. He put the team on his back. He won the grand finals MVP, if my memory serves.
It might have been,
I think it was
Gesture. Yeah, probably was
sure
Prophet.
It was him. But yeah, I mean, he is every bit as clutch as any of these other guys, and he has been a defining factor from, again, I missed a little bit of Seoul last weekend, but this weekend it was huge, right there. And Seoul's doing things a little different. They're really running the Pharaoh where they can get away with it, where they can do it, and Prophet's been that guy. And he's just, if they're going to be that team that's offbeat, that's doing things a little different, it's got to be the red hot, super sharp Swiss Army knife that is Prophet, that can play anything, can do anything. He's this team's MVP. He's their Fleta. Yeah. He's their Carpe. He is what will propel them to what I think would be an upset finish to actually make it into the grand finals here, and to be playing in the last game of the season and have a shot. And even if they win it, like, it is just absolutely going to be in large part because Prophet has a very, very strong performance. Gesture, comfortable on Roadhog, and I think that is more so true for him than a lot of the other main tanks. It's worked for them, right? And this is the third strength. They're so hot right now. Like, I'm stealing the meme text. Think of the Zoolander guy. Just Soul Dynasty so hot right now. The only map they lost was a 3-2 versus Shanghai, who's everybody's favorite, I think, coming into this tournament, right? Or the popular favorite, not everybody's. He's got to continue to do that. I think if Seoul's going to win, they have to be the team playing the Roadhog composition, and they have to be perfect at it. It has to come from Gesture hitting the hooks, getting the picks, getting the kills, making it easy for Profit to clean up everybody. It's got to come from that tank line. And I think that is a strength. The fact that they can, they're holding the Justice's torch right now, right? Like they're playing it with the Roadhog D.Va instead of the Roadhog Zarya. But it's got to come from them. They're even back to it's a double off tank meta. How many main tanks do you think Seoul has in? 2. But they're back to that, but it's working right now. So there's no complaints. You don't change things that are working. You don't, that's similar to overcoaching, overthinking, etc. would be to make a swap or do anything like that. They put this whole season into making Gesture and Marvel work together, and now it's working. So you've got to consider it a strength at the moment that he is pulling off the Roadhog better than just about any other main tank option is. Now, as far as the biggest weaknesses go, I do think they're on the wrong side of this meta game, right? So I think they're probably going to have to switch, and then they're back to 2 main tanks. And even in this composition, they're still running Marvel on D.Va. And when you're talking about comparing him to Void, this is much like the Sato conversation. He's playing great right now, but like now he's got to go against every matchup is against Fury, it's against Choi Hyo Bin, it's against Void, and he's gonna be outclassed. I just view that as a weakness when I look at the way this team is set up and the way it's built. Just like all the other ones, it doesn't have to be the reason they lose. They don't have to lose. It's not how I draw it up. It's something, if I was coaching the other team, okay, I want my D.Va focused on Marvel. He's not the best D.Va you've played against. Not even close. You've beaten the other. Like if you can beat Void, you can beat Marvel, right? So just attack him. That's where my focus would be. Let's get this D.Va out of the fight, and let's move on from there. And the other one, I mean, it's kind of these. I didn't even think about it when I wrote them, but it's also like they're so committed to this Roadhog composition. I don't know. I think that tells me they don't have scrim time on the dive. They're just not doing it. So what happens when this composition they're running that all 3 of these other teams have beaten with regularity and consistency to still be here is that's what they're doing, and the other teams hold the key. Do they have the ability to flex off of it and go somewhere else? I'm not seeing that from them. San Francisco is the one that's doing both. So I'm confident they can make the switch super for Smurf. They can, juggle the roster however they need to in order to make both compositions work. But to me, all Seoul's eggs are in on this one basket. And that gives them the ability to be the team that's different, the one that teams aren't preparing for. But it also means if you're wrong, and it seems like you probably are based off the results of all the other games, not theirs. Theirs have been great. They even took Shanghai to the brink with it. I'm not saying it can't work, but if it doesn't work, what then? I'm pretty sure it's going to be they just lose. And that's a rough go when you're just all in on the one comp that the other 3 teams that made it beat to get there, then it's a little bit of a weak spot. So, did we get the right 4 teams?
Did we get the right
for this? Oh, like are all 4 of these teams right for the grand finals? I'm hard pressed to find a team. Like Seoul's the weak spot here, right? Like San Francisco, Philly had to happen out of NA. Shanghai had to happen. I mean, you wanted New York, but was there another team that would give us a better actual grand final? Not one you'd like more, but a better matchup going into this top 4.
I think these are the 4 strongest teams. Like even like obviously they played it out like that, but like even taking that out, I mean, who else would you put? I think people would have some people wanted to see Justice, but that would have just been a travesty. It would have been cool from the Cinderella story standpoint, but in terms of like, did we get the 4 best teams into the Final Four. It's at the very least, it's super close.
Personally, I wanted Guangzhou. I think a peak Guangzhou playing at their best would have been better than Seoul currently, but that's not who showed up at the playoffs, right?
Right.
So I don't want the Guangzhou that showed up to the playoffs. Same thing for Paris, really. They were a team that really showed the ability to be right up there, the ability to give us those matches, but just didn't quite bring it. And with Seoul having all that experience, the London core, the championship core from season 1, I'm hard pressed to, like, how do you want, you've got to want to watch Profit play in this, right? Like, it's got to be a thing. I'm super pumped. I think there's a lot of criticism and a lot of people upset. Hey, you can't let every team into the playoffs. Nobody wanted to do that, but you had one bracket with 13 teams. You had another bracket with 7 teams in it. What was the cutoff going to be? There's no good answer. And to me, this gave everybody a chance to send their teams off. It gave everybody that one last chance to see them. And we got the right teams in the end. I got no complaints. at all about the way this playoffs played out. And that's a remarkable feat that mostly goes to the players, admittedly, and the teams from keeping everything together and everything going on and keeping the level of play up and fighting through the balance changes that are part of the game. It's not a knock on any. We talked in the pre-show. I'm sick of that conversation about how we can't change the meta and blah blah blah. Well, we're playing a video game, and video games get patches, and we want to watch a competitive video game. They get patched.
We can do that. That's the beauty of you saying that you can't, is that you absolutely can. So
I'm super pumped. I think this is absolutely the right forward. Really, the only downer to me is that we've got to wait a month, but there's no fix for that either. They've got to get over there. They've got to quarantine for 2 weeks. The fastest you could have done it.
Yeah, there's no physical way to do it unless they're playing in like an airport or something,
or in the quarantine facility with whatever internet's available.
Oh, that would have been sick if they set up an actual quarantine facility for it.
Well, the government forces you into a specific facility. I think
that's what I'm saying. Is if they would have gotten a quarantine, if they would have been able to play in it would have been weird, but they never would have done that. So,
I'm super pumped. To me, this is great. Exactly the best case scenario that anybody could have hoped for.
Yeah.
Once the poop hit the fan with this season, I was nervous. I know Blevins, you were super nervous. It was just crazy when we were sitting there trying to fill episodes. When are they going to play again? We don't know. Well, what are we supposed to talk about for the next 58 minutes? I don't know. Let's just fumble through. It was a really rough go for a while there for not just Overwatch League, but for everybody. And this league, it's year 3, but what sports league, what esport has been at its peak in season 3? There's a lot of growing pains still to come. There's a lot we're going through right now. And I've said it from the beginning of the season. The one thing I want out of this season is a super competitive grand finals. I don't mean this Final Four. You can have as many 3-0s as you want, as long as that last game, the one where the winner holds the trophy at the end, is 4-3. I'm assuming it's going to be a 7 mapper or whatever, but it's down to the wire. Goes to King of the Hill, 0.3, 99-99. Profit versus Carpe. It's just, those are the only 2 left alive. If we get that moment, then everything else was worth it. Everything that we went through all season, none of it will be remembered. It'll just be an iconic, great moment, not in Overwatch League, but in esports as a whole. And the league needs that W, because the last not all grand finals work out that way. I'm not going to blast them if it doesn't. It's really hard to get that. In every sport, but every so often you get the banger. You get the all-timer.
You get the legendary.
You get the slobber knocker. And I'm hungry for it. I want it in Overwatch. I love them when they come up in the regular season, but I'm itching for it in a grand finals, in the big moment. I want it, and I think we've done what we can to give ourselves the best chance at exactly that.
We definitely have the best shot at that happening, and I do agree. These are, with the exception of NY, but these are the 4 teams that best deserve to be here. And
chat, everybody, can you imagine how obnoxious it would be if I was like Blevins is with New York about Houston? I mean, granted, different spots in the standings, so it would be way more ludicrous. But if I was like, if only Houston had been in the grand finals, we could have gotten
we
everything.
almost tasted it, but got stomped when it really mattered. Which goes, but I'm not gonna harp on it. We'll save that for other times. But that's your preview. That's what we've got going in. That's what we'll be playing out in a month. So, like you said before, Death, we're gonna have some episodes in between then, of course, in the Owlies. So, yeah. But that is our preview here for the grand finals as we head to Korea. Not we, literally, we're not going, but as the league goes to Korea. Death, anything else before we get going here?
No, that's it. Keep an eye out for, like we said, the upcoming episodes. There's also the All-Stars weekend coming up in this break at some point. I don't even know exactly when. It's never been my most hype event of the season. I'll probably be watching football, but I'll watch some VODs.
I might even be watching
and watch
football.
some things. But yeah, so keep an eye out for that. That'll be a nice little, I think, appetizer going into it, just to kind of keep the Overwatch juices flowing a little bit during the long unavoidable break. But no, that's it for me. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you guys next week.
Yeah. So everyone, thank you again for listening. You can find the podcast anywhere that you can find podcasts. Just search for High Noon Podcast. Go to Twitter, Twitch, all that stuff. We're High Noon Podcast everywhere. Patreon.com/High Noon Podcast as well. Death, where can people find you on the internet when you're not here?
Deathblow TTV on Twitter and Twitch, and I'm nowhere else. So
yeah. And you can find me as well on Twitter at @the_Blevins. And you can find both of us in the Discord, which is the best place to be, discord.me/High Noon Podcast. But that is going to be it. Thank you again for watching. For Deathblow, I'm the Blevins. And remember, it's High Noon.